are getting closer and closer, and I think that's about where I'm going to end it today. Alrighty then. So I figured I'd give you a little bit of rundown on how all of this is going to go together, and why I'm not too concerned about that jagged edge. Obviously, we've got my rocker. This right here is the inner rocker. This is actually, I guess, technically the inner rocker for a pickup. They don't sell a blazer one, which is a little bit longer, or at least they might, but I think it was more money than I wanted to spend. But basically the pickup one stops and does this little angle thing. The blazer one continues on. So if I need to, I'm going to cut this out and then just extend this myself. No one sees it, it lives behind everything. But basically this is that jagged edge that's all torn up. This would be the floor. This would be where the floor goes up on the pickup, but the Blazer and Suburban continue on. I bet if I got a Suburban one it would have worked, but LMC lists this as being for a Blazer. No one gets any love. But this will nest in here like so. And then you'll see where I drilled out these holes. That is where I'll plug weld onto the inner rocker. But before that, we've got this kick panel, which I needed to replace on the passenger side, but the driver side it's in really good shape, so I don't need to replace it, and I'm not going to cut the whole thing out to get this. I do, however, need like this much of it, so this bottom bit I'm going to need. But what's going to happen is this will get welded to the inside of that inner rocker and get sandwiched in between the inner rocker and the outer rocker, like so, with all the spot welds and whatnot. Again, I'll continue this on to about there. So I just need to cut a little bit of metal. That's okay. I have a shear. In worst case scenario, I have a, like, you know, angle grinder. But you'll see how this kind of nests really nicely inside there. I'm going to plug weld all into that. I would spot weld it. I do have a spot welder, but I already had to drill out the old spot welds. So I have all of these lovely holes that tell me exactly where factory spot welds were. So I'm going to just plug weld every single one of those to the inner rocker. It'll be nice and strong. So that is the plan of attack. So I guess there's nothing to it but to do it. Alright guys, still plugging away. Got a little ahead of myself. Started working on the inner rocker, and I kind of welded it in. Well, it's not actually welded in, it's just tack welded, but in a decent number of places. So yeah, it's in there. There's a couple issues because they can't seem to make anything that actually fits an original. This right here doesn't really have the right transition, nor does it have it up front. So I'm going to have to take care of that. I also need to make from here to here, which I already knew about. So that's going to be coming soon. Yeah, but it's mostly in there. Now I gave the floor some rigidity back because when I cut out this section, this was a little floppy. And then the important thing is when you're welding this in, I was holding underneath with a dolly. You can use a screwdriver or whatever, but basically you want to press up whichever one's lower. Or just, you know, this is your reference line. This is kind of wiggly. Press it whichever way to get it nice and flush, and then you can tack weld it. If you don't, you'll have weird gaps, and then you're going to fill everything with Bondo, and that's how you do it like a hack. So don't be a hack. Do it the right way. But a couple more things I need to do. We need to obviously make this panel right here. It comes to just right here. I need to remake this rusty bit. So I'm going to cut a, 3/4 wide piece of steel, lay it in, and just kind of just tack weld it there. Doesn't really need to be too crazy. It's just replacing that reinforcement. And I also need to finish chopping this out and replace it with the patch panel. So that is our patch panel that's going to live right there. But before I really do that, we're going to basically try to make the rocker itself fit. I still need to do a little bit of trimming, and for all I know, I might have cut off a little too much, so I might need to add a little bit more back here. So we'll see. Basically, I want that to be a nice, smooth fit. Bare minimum, I need to trim a little off right there, and I need to trim the actual body of the truck back just a little bit. The front actually also does look pretty good. Again, there's a little bit of a hump right there that needs to be taken care of. Just knock that down a little bit. And once this is fitting right, then I can kind of finalize the substructure. So I'm gonna break out the old flap disc and take care of that. So I got it trimmed down. I'm liking the fit right there. Obviously, I've got a little bit of a gap to fill here, but it's not the end of the world. I did end up, instead of trimming this, I trimmed this because it makes more sense. We got a nice even gap right there. We've got those guys lining up down there. Up at the front, I've got a nice transition to there. Not so much there, but we can massage that. And then same right here, we've got a pretty good transition. So everything from the way it looks, this is where that needs to be. So I've marked it in a couple spots. Let me actually, I want to mark that height right here. So terrible Sharpie. I need to find a new marker. I've got some Milwaukees somewhere. I just don't know where. All I could find was the old Sharpie. So that is looking pretty good. We've got our inner rocker doing its thing, kind of nesting on that like it should. So I'm just going to pull this guy off, and we'll start working more on the substructure. So the first thing we're going to do is, since I already have a piece for that, we are going to measure and cut our piece for that. So it looks like we're going to want to go for about 13.5 inches by, I know it hangs down just a little bit from here, we'll call it 4.5, maybe 5 inches. So I'm going to cut a 13.5 by 5 inch section. We're going to hold it up. Then we're going to just trace mostly this diagonal onto it, and then see where we're going to go from there. So yeah, gonna keep plugging away. All right, guys, I am so sorry. I just started working, and you know how it can be sometimes. You just start working on something, and then you just keep going and keep going and keep going, and I kind of forgot to take the camera out. But what we got going on here, I got the inner rocker welded in. I thought I was going to just tack it and then talk about it, but I ended up welding it up to about here. And then I smoothed it out, and then I made this panel, and then I welded it in, and then I made another little guy right there, and then welded that in there to close that up. So the rear end of this is actually pretty much done, aside from spot welding this to the whatchamacallit, spot welding it to the little outrigger body mount that is this guy. I do have the front to do. I did at least stop there. I started trimming and made a mark. You can see that line going straight across. I think, can you? Yeah, you can see that. It's right there. Me. Line right there. That's where I need to trim to mount this guy. That'll then sit like so. We're going to stitch weld that all along that side. We're going to spot weld it or plug weld it all along here. I'm probably just going to plug weld it. And then we'll be ready to stick the outer rocker on. And then once that's done, I'll take care of this piece. I have a new one of those. I decided that I'm not going to cut that all out and replace it and undo the body mount. I'm just going to cut it. I'm just going to weld the outer half of it on, because that's easier and I don't need to do the hard part. So yeah, I'm going to keep on plugging away. And then I guess also while I'm at it, I'm going to make a filler similar to this for right here, just to tuck below. I may or may not do that now, or I'll do it after everything's together. But yeah, that's the update. Alright, that front guy is on now. As you saw, welded up at the top, and then did some spot welding down there. Finished it off with a couple tacks around the edge just to make sure. Mostly ground some of the stuff down. I did find a few extra holes over here that I had missed. There. And one good way to find that is to actually take a flashlight and shine it from the backside and then look for light. So you can see, you know, there's a hole right there. That's okay, that's a screw hole. I might fill that anyway, just because they'll probably end up, when I put the new trim covers over there, it will kind of obscure that. Or so when I put the new trim covers over there, the little sill plates, I can't guarantee the holes will be in exactly the same spots. But shot it with a coat of kind of rust reformer paint, just to keep that from rusting. And so now it's about time to throw the rocker on for real and actually get it welded. I did grind down my lip down here. I ground down around the edges here. So I think we're ready. We'll probably hit that just a little bit. I was going to smooth this all the way down, but the issue with that is that there's a really high chance of burning through, and that's all going to get covered anyway. And, you know, I'm okay showing my battle scars. So, yeah, I'm going to get to it. All right. I measured about 16 times. We're ready to put her in. then we got the welding all done. Got my plug welds there, down there, and then stitched that all together. It does look kind of ugly, but for those of you that don't know, whenever you're doing sheet metal, you don't want to just run a bead. Firstly, you'll probably burn through. Secondly, you're going to put way too much heat in that section and it'll cause it to warp. So what you want to do is go tack, 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 and then come back and build on the tack that you just did. I did kind of stretch that out a little bit. Some of these tacks are short beads, but I kept them, you know, with 1/4 inch, 3/8, so like 6 to 10 millimeters. But rocker panel is now finally in. So next step up is going to be to grind down all those welds, make it nice and smooth. Hit these a little bit with the flap disc just so it looks kind of more like a factory spot weld. And then it'll be time for Bondo, a little bit of Bondo, and then some paint. Alright guys, we are officially done with the welding and the grinding. Fully welded, ground down nice and smooth. So this guy is ready for some Bondo, some filler. I'm gonna take a nice little skim coat just to cover any small seams right there. I also, off camera, replaced this guy. You can sort of see it, this little brace. Just welded to the outside of it, nothing special. A little ugly, but I don't mind. But as far as this goes, I even ground in there, and I told myself I wouldn't do that because no one's going to see it, but I just kept grinding and made it smooth. So yeah, so I just hit it with a little bit of wire wheel to scuff it up a little bit, and it is now time for some filler. Alright guys, good news, I did still have some filler left over. I bought some when I did the hood on the MGB, but I wasn't sure if I had any left. So, small amount. I'm going to just mix in some hardener, and this should be all that we need for this section of the blazer. I'm going to use about that much hardener, and we're going to mix it. We're going to do the scrape and fold kind of technique. You don't want to, you really don't want to go too crazy when you're like mixing it, because you really don't want to aerate this stuff, otherwise it won't work very well. So scrape, fold, should do us pretty good. Okay, we also don't really want to over mix it. Here I'm finding spots of hardener that I missed. But that should be pretty good. Alrighty then, that should be good for now. So all we got to do is let it sit for an hour or so and dry, and then we can sand it down, make it smooth, and then we can seam seal, prime, and paint. Alrighty then, Bondo has cured and sanded it down, nice and smooth, front and rear. So next step up, gonna hit it with a little bit of etching primer, and then I think I'm gonna go to bed. primed, it's dry. Now we're ready for some paint. That is what I painted the whole truck in a long time ago. The reason for that is at some point when I finish this, the wheel arches, tailgate, and all that, I'm going to paint it for real. But in the meantime, Rust-Oleum Deep Blue is easy and cheap and works. So basically, I can color match as I do individual pieces of the body. Once everything is done, everything's going to get stripped down, and I'm going to paint it with real primer, and I'm going to paint it with real paint, and then clear coat, and all of that good stuff. But in the meantime, rattle can is easy to match, so that's what we're going with. I just bumped that. I don't think you can see. And again, this is going to get redone. It probably won't get redone for like 5 years, but it'll get redone. So it doesn't really matter. It just needs to be presentable. Because, you know, I still want to drive this truck. I don't want to take it off the road for like 8 months to do body work. So we should be ready for next spring, or for summer this year. But we'll let that dry, and then we're going to stick the door on, tape off over there, and paint our white stripe down a little bit better. All right, guys, door's back on. I got some paint on there. So now we just got to fix the stripe. So what we're going to do, just do the really basic version. Going to take some masking tape. We're going to stick it to the edge right there. Follow the edge that we already have and go to our door. Just like so. This is similar to what I do if I were painting this with like real paint, but I'd obviously take a little bit more care. So we got that masked off. Now I can just hit this with some white and it'll look presentable. Okay, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, guys, good news. I did still have some filler left over.